Okay, we're live. We are going to today we're going to discuss my wife's experience while she traveled recently on a plane. She spoke with an elderly lady that for several days um, nobody acknowledged her. An elderly gentleman with a cane that actually had some shaking going on. Uh, she herself was disrespected by some 20-year-old guys. I wasn't there. Um, but we're going to let her tell her story of what she experienced. Turn this on. And some causes for this generation of young people today. Um, I didn't realize how bad it was until she took this trip and what she personally experienced. She would have never experienced it if I was there.
I don't know that I can.
And so, go to my channel. And I couldn't believe. But the society today and this young generation, young adults, there's such a lack of respect and just courtesy and for one another. It's all about me. It wasn't like this when I was growing up. You know, as a young man growing up, if a girl was standing, I would get up if there was nowhere for her to sit and offer her my seat. Not because I was flirting with her or I was trying to get her phone number. The only reason I did that is because she was a young lady, she was a woman, and I'm a man, I'm strong, I can stand. I offer her my seat as a respect, as a courtesy. Um, and this is being forgotten. You know, if I knew a girl and we're outside and it was cold and I had on a jacket and she didn't have on a jacket, I'd offer her my jacket. Not because I was flirting with her, because I care about her. She's a girl, you know, she had my respect. And I would do that as a man, and I felt good as a man to do that. But like I say, in this generation, it's all about me. And my wife will give you some very real situations that she personally experienced recently. And so, with no further ado.
Hi, everyone. I was traveling. My dad was ill and had to take a last minute trip, and I had my mother with me who has some disabilities and some medical issues. And because it was a last minute ticket, we were flying a lower rate airline. The first thing that happened was I was immediately told that I would have assistance in a wheelchair for my mother and assistance with our baggage and all of that when I got to the airport. Well, when I got to the airport, there was no help at all. None. So I'm trying to push my mother in the wheelchair, tow our bags, and her oxygen machine, all at the same time, with no help. Several young men just walked by and pretended they didn't see nothing. Not a single person offered help. In fact, at one point, I went to put my bags in the baggage line, which was not open yet because it was a very early morning flight, just so that I could have those out of my hand and then go get my mother, who's desperately trying to wheel herself in because I don't have enough hands, and get her inside and get her situated. And even the TSA guy who saw the baggage up at the front started going, well, whose bag is this? And I said, it's mine. I just left it there for a moment so I can get my mother, who's trying to wheel herself in. Well, you can't do that. You literally cannot do that. You have to do something with it. And I said, I'm just trying to get my mother in from outside because I can't handle her bags and the oxygen machine and push her. Nope. So I ended up having to ask some very nice ladies if they could watch my bags while I went and got my mother. But nobody would offer assistance. No one. Now the ladies did watch my bags and I was very grateful and they were very nice about it. I have no complaints there. But it was amazing to me how I could see even people employed by the airline not bothering to lift a finger. That was the start of this fiasco. Then we're upstairs, we're waiting for our flight, and for whatever reason, they've done away with 90% of the chairs at the gates.
At this particular
airline. So seats were few and far in between. However, they did have a place for people with wheelchairs and things to sit. And I'm sitting there waiting with my mother. And here comes a gentleman. He's in his 80s, 90s. He probably had Parkinson's or something, with a walker. My husband said a cane, but he was literally with a walker. And next to me are these three girls, young girls. We're talking 20s, early college age, sitting in the chairs, and none of them would get up and give this gentleman a seat. Not a single one. I got up, I gave this gentleman a seat. He was so thankful. But it hit me at that moment. When did it become okay in today's society to be all about yourself, not be aware of your surroundings, and be decent to other people, especially people that you see are in need, whether they're elderly, whatever. I remember a day when if they saw a woman, any woman, standing, gentlemen would offer their seats. I believe that women are capable. It's not about being weaker or stronger or whatever. It's about being polite, courteous, and mindful and respectful of other people. That was just one example. This other example happened when my mother's oxygen machine needed to be charged. You know, my mom's supposed to be on oxygen 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And I'm desperately looking for a plug to plug in her machine so that she can be on the oxygen and it can charge the battery. Shouldn't have been a hard thing, but there was only one outlet. And I walk over to the outlet because this gentleman had just unplugged his phone and there was a lady that had just sat down in front of the plug. And I said, "Excuse me, do you mind if I plug in my mother's oxygen machine so that the battery can charge and she can have oxygen?" And this woman literally looked at me and said, "No, I was about to plug in my phone. I need to charge my phone." And at first I'm thinking, okay, does she need it just for a moment to make a couple of very important phone calls, you know? And I sat there for the next hour and a half watching her take selfies while my mother was doing without oxygen. And I literally said to the woman, "Wow, it's more important you charge your phone and take selfies than it is for my mother to have oxygen so she can breathe."
See, and that's what I'm talking about, the self-centeredness. You know, this woman was 30, 35 years old. She knew better. You know, when I was growing up, that wouldn't have happened. There was this general rule in society that if somebody had a bigger reason, a more important purpose for the use of that, whatever it is, you gave it up to them. You gave it to them. You understood.
We were taught in kindergarten to share.
Your parents teach you as children to share.
Yes.
They may have taught that in school, but I don't care about that. That should happen at home to start with. And that's a good point. You know, it's not being taught at home in general anymore. But I'm not ready to go there yet, because that brings us to cause and effect, reasons for why that I don't want to bring that up at this point. Tell the viewing audience, we have 6 people here, and thank you for being here. I'm surprised so many people showed up. Thank you for showing up. If I don't know you, if you haven't joined my community yet, join, subscribe. I'll be sure to become your friend and join your community and subscribe and give you support. That's what this is all about. But back to the subject here. My wife saw an 80-plus-year-old man standing, waiting, needing a chair. Was it a couple 20-year-old guys? About?
Yeah.
Guys were in their 20s. My wife looks at those. Now, her mother, reminds you, is in a wheelchair. She's on oxygen. They're sitting in the
reserved
handicap section of seating. There's 2-3 guys in their 20s sitting in these chairs where they didn't belong in the first place. And my wife looks over to one sitting next to her and looks at these guys and says, "Would one of you give this elderly man a chair?" And he had a cane and he was kind of shaking, you know? And they looked at her and said, "Well, why don't you give him your chair?"
Literally.
Good thing I wasn't there. That wouldn't have happened. That wouldn't have happened. But they did. I wasn't there. My wife looks at him and says, "Okay." And she gives this elderly gentleman her chair. While these young guys stood there and took pride how they told her. And whoops, I'm losing my leg. That was not supposed to happen. I gotta momentarily fix this little problem. So bear with me here.
Okay, I think we're okay.
Well, we're not okay because I gotta adjust this. And we're not okay.
Well, it won't look like it here.
And I need you to go get me some This is not good.
Okay.
Well, one intermission. Sorry for this brief break here. Hold on, everybody, 1 second. So, okay, so the story goes, well, my wife, that just kind of, that upset her. And we didn't grow up that way.
No, in fact, I went and told management and they made a move, which I can laugh about now.
And good thing that happened, because I hope they learned something. But, I want to get into, where does this behavior come from in our society today? I would have never dreamed of acting that way or saying anything like that in my 20s. Not even as a young man, as a teenager. Even as a teenager, I would have never acted that way. The elderly had my total, complete respect as a teenager. But I was taught this at home from a young age. I couldn't believe my wife came back sharing this with me. I'm just like, wow, we need to do a show, a broadcast on this subject. But hold on, I'm going to hold that thought for a second. Was there anything else you experienced that you...
Well, it was just amazing to me that this brought into my realm of more current thinking of, wow, today we have accepted the fact that people will be selfish and self-centered and do not demand or expect for people to treat other people decently, whether you're elderly or not. It's another example. I wasn't even traveling. I have torn my rotator cuff, and my shoulder doesn't like it when I lift heavy things. It throws a real big fit. So we had to get some mortar. And that's not a terribly heavy bag, but it's fairly heavy. I'm in not Home Depot, sorry. I'm in Lowe's.
Yeah.
And I go to get this bag and can't get any help. Called for assistance 3 different times. Have to move 4 to 10 bags, more like 10, out of the way because they were busted to even get this bag after waiting for over a half hour. And finally going, forget it. I got other things I've got to do. And I remember going shopping for things that were heavy like that. And if a guy was in, and there were several guys in the tile aisle just ignoring it, that would have said, oh, let me get that for you. We don't do that as a society anymore. And I realize that some women believe that it's because they're being treated as quote unquote the weaker sex. But that really isn't it. And we have allowed for our value to be diminished. Because they have convinced this generation, maybe even the generation before, that it was some kind of disrespect to offer assistance, to open a door, to give you a chair. And yet, what it really did was place a higher value on you as a person.
Place a higher value on you as a person. What do you mean by that?
Well, women are just as capable as men, absolutely. But we're not built the same. We don't think the same. We don't talk the same. We're not the same, nor should women try to be the same as men. Otherwise, God wouldn't have created men and women. Women in general tend to be more caring, more introspective, more feeling oriented. Men tend to be more straight line, direct.
To the point.
One thing at a time, kind of thinking and acting. Women can go from A to B to C to D and connect it all, and most men will be looking at you going, huh?
Okay, so the point is what?
Well, by making men in general believe that in some way, by opening a door or giving us a chair or assisting us with something that we may be having a little bit of trouble with, that men have somehow said we're weaker. It's not true. But it took us from being a diamond and the crowning glory to being the piece of coal that you can just step on and crush.
Being treated like garbage. Now, but it's proven and statistics show that physically, and it's obvious, women are physically weaker, men. You go into the gym, a man's lifting 250 pounds on the bench press. A woman's doing great if she's doing 120. We are way physically stronger. In some respects, and remember, the woman is our helpmate. It's the way they were created. Not weaker necessarily. Mentally, sometimes they are right up there with us, and maybe
sometimes
stronger than us in some areas, and that's why we get so frustrated. You know what I'm saying? You men, you know what? You do know what I'm talking about. And in just some in these areas. But the point is women were created to be respected. They were created to be honored. They were created to be admired. My wife being feminine, and my wife being cute, my wife being, that's attractive to me as a man. If she was like me, I wouldn't find her attractive. And God created women this way. There's this distinct difference on all levels. And so for our society today, and for women today to go, don't look at me as weaker, I can do what you can do. Statistics prove and show women that work in the man's world doing physical work, they die younger. Their bodies give out earlier. They have heart attacks quicker. Their bodies weren't designed. They were never meant. They were meant to have our children. Then thank God.
I'd like to see a man go through that one.
We got to get back to basics as a society. Nathan says in here, what's this guy's name? Davidson. Mentioned that he's been disrespected.
David E.
You want to share, Nathan, where you've been disrespected as a young man?
I believe it can go both ways.
Nathan, do you want to share your experience of being disrespected as a young man? And thank you, David Ernest, for being here.
I believe.
No, I reiterated 3 times. Well, there's many stories. Give us one story, Nathan, if you will. If you're not comfortable, that's okay. No problem. You can pass. It's okay. I'm just trying to, you mentioned it. I want to include you in if you have some, or anybody else have anything to say about where they've been disrespected. I will tell you on Hangouts. Okay. I'm looking forward to it. And if anybody in the chat has anything to share on this note that you would like to share, I will read it here for the audience and future audience to hear, if you would like. So I'll be checking the chat. That's what I'm doing here with this phone in my hand. I'm coming up as acrylic pouring. That's my wife's channel. Joy of acrylic pouring, that is. And so anyways, if you have a story to share it, and I'll read it when I see it. But it looks like at this juncture, we're right at the verge of getting into cause and effect. What has caused this generation to end up in this place we're in today? I'm in utter shock. My grandmother is rolling over in her grave. I mean, I've never imagined that we would end up in this place that where we're at today concerning respect and appreciation and disregard for one another. It's mind-blowing, and I believe we have some ideas for the reasons for why.
I'm curious, does anybody feel differently? Do they feel like this is okay? I'm curious.
My wife's wanting to know, is anybody in the chat or anybody that watches this after the live stream feels like this is okay behavior? No problem. There's nothing wrong with it. And if so, I've got a question. Would you want, if one of these elderly people at the airport was your grandparent, would you want someone else to treat them that way? Or would you want your grandparents to be shown the same respect that you would give them? That's how I see it. That elderly man may not be my grandfather or great-grandfather or my dad, but I would want my dad to be given that respect. And just as a human being, as a living soul, I'm young, I'm healthy. My bones are in much better shape. My joints are in much better shape, and I can stand. I can go lean against the wall. I can sit on the floor. If he gets on the floor, he may not be able to get back up without a whole lot of help. And, it's stopping to treat one another the way we want to be treated ourselves. So it's even more than just our grandparent, when we will, I'm going to be elderly one day, you're going to be elderly, we're all going to end up elderly. How do we want to be treated when we're elderly?
Or even if it was your sister. If it was your sister having to stand for hours, because like I said, I was at the airport waiting on a flight for over 2.5 hours. And Would you want your sister or your mother to have to stand for over 2.5 hours while you sat? I know I didn't raise my boys that way. My boys would have gotten up. My boys would have said, no, Mom, or no, sis, you sit. And you don't even have to be elderly. That's my question. When did it become wrong in society to treat people?
Okay, not wrong, but okay. When did it become okay?
To treat people with this lack of concern for the other person. And that goes even further. I mean, how many of us are truly concerned about our neighbor? Check on our neighbor. Hey, how you doing? Is there anything I can do for you? How many of us really bother to connect and treat people the way we wish we were treated?
Or would be treated. Okay, and so did you mention the elderly lady that had come like from Amsterdam or the UK, and you had offered her your seat, and she said what?
She said, oh, bless you, thank you. I've been flying for over 3 days. She had been flying for over 3 days, and they did not. And they did not, nobody would give this poor woman their seat. And she's just, I mean, you could just tell she was tired, physically tired. And she was a missionary, which was a whole other story in and of itself.
But for 3 days, this woman was never given a seat.
Not once.
When she was standing. Nobody gave her any respect, any regard. There was a lack of concern for her. And this is what I'm saying. The cause. What caused our society today end up in this place that we're in now?
Hello, Ken in life.
Who is it?
I'm trying to
At
see
the top.
CC's World, Australia.
Cece's World, thanks for being here. Thanks for dropping in. It's good to see you. Thanks. Have any comments? Feel free.
Well, I'm trying to read it. Hello, Ken in life. Society has become more closed down on itself due to fear. All the news and media about bad things. I would agree that would be true, but I didn't know it was a bad thing to, be willing as someone younger to give up my seat.
Well, I don't think it's looked upon as a bad thing. It's self-centeredness, and it's a lack of respect for your fellow man.
And yes, I would agree, people being less willing to approach their neighbor, to check on their neighbor, all of that because of society and the way it is. But the only way we can change it that I know of is to take it into our hands and,
Make the difference.
Approach our neighbors. Hey, I'd like to introduce myself. If you need anything, I'm right here. Feel free anytime. I remember Welcome Wagon. I know it shows how old I am. But it used to be this big thing. You moved into a neighborhood and the Welcome Wagon would come and welcome you to the neighborhood.
Now, what's the welcome? Is that a wagon that says welcome on the side that has stuff in it they're giving away? What's the welcome wagon?
Actually, it kind of was like that. There was people that would volunteer. I assume it was a volunteer basis. And they would bring you a little basket of housewarming stuff and tell you, welcome to the neighborhood, let you know what was going on in the neighborhood, let you know what kind of neighborhood you'd move to. And you reached out to your neighbors. Block parties were something that was very commonplace where you just get everybody on your street together and you brought a potluck together and you rented the bounce house for the kids and they played and you talked and you got to know each other.
Yes, but no, times have changed quite a bit, unfortunately, because of all the wrongdoing and evil going on in this world.
I'm just saying.
But I believe that.
Go ahead. I'm just.
And so it makes it difficult. But I do remember as a kid when I was growing up that once you knew your neighbors, you know, my mom was friends with some women in the area, in this apartment or in a little community, and somebody was baking a cake or making dinner and they needed a cube of butter for their mashed potatoes. They were out. You know, you get a knock on the door and it'd be like, hey, I need a cube of butter for my potatoes. And if you had a cube of butter, hey, here, help, you know, knock yourself out, enjoy. You know, and if you needed a cup of milk because you were baking a cake, you know, you'd go knock on a neighbor's door that you were friends with and say, hey, I need a cup of milk, I'm baking a cake. You know, and this was common. Now that was after friendships were established, of course. What Lisa was talking about was somebody being new to the community. You know, I do know, living out here in the desert, I was working on my dad's house. It was under construction. We were brand new. We were doing some remodeling. And a neighbor from across the street, it was wintertime and cold, and neighbor comes across the street, man, with a couple of Tupperware bowls with covers and asked us if we'd like some hot soup, you know, about lunchtime. I was like, wow, this was like in the 80s. I'm going, this is just too good to be true, you know? And so that was really nice. But somehow we need to rebuild and establish trust and community. You know, and I guess it starts out just by getting to know our neighbors to start with, you know. David, my wife is going to respond to what you've written here.
I agree. You know, that's shameful. Well, I'm trying to read his comment. He says, I'm disabled and I've had a few bad times when I was walking down the hall at a hospital and had to sit on the floor to rest and nobody stopped to even help, not even the staff. See, this is my point. I was not raised, nor could I ever walk by somebody sitting on the floor without saying, hey, are you okay? In today's society, people pay no attention. It's wrong that they pay no attention.
We gotta get back to
basics. It takes 2 seconds to go, hey, can I help you? Do you need help? Are you okay? And then CC World says, very true, everyone has the power to change society. That welcome wagon was a very nice thing. Love this.
Look at her down.
Love this. So, again, it was our willingness, CC, to reach out. And we have to change this and make a conscious effort to reach out. And men, don't be afraid to open the door to the gas station or whatever for a woman. Most of us, believe it or not, we're going to say thank you. We do appreciate it. And for the ones that don't, I guess that's just really too bad because you've really done the right thing.
You know, the times when I do this, I have regardless of the age of a woman, I'll open the door or I'm on my way out and I'll pause and let them in or let them come in first before I go out. And, you know, a lot of times I'll tell them chivalry isn't dead, it's extinct. And they laugh and I laugh, you know, we have a good laugh there. And the elderly ladies really get a kick out of that because they can identify big time. They grew up with chivalry, with men being men and giving them that respect. And but it's fun, you might want to try it yourself. Open a door for a lady and tell her chivalry isn't dead, it's extinct, and just watch the reaction, and it's sad. It shouldn't be extinct, and it starts with me and you.
He just reminded me of a story. My mother-in-law, until the day she died, and to me it was like, what do you mean? But he brought a good point. She never ever, not once in her entire life, had to pump her own gas. To me it would be like, huh? In fact, it was like, what do you mean you've never pumped your own gas? She never pumped her own gas. Her husband would even take the car to the gas station and pump the gas. She never had to go to a gas station to pump. It wasn't even in her realm of experience. So when her husband died, her son took that over and had to do that. At first, he was like, I can't believe I'm having to do this for my mom. And I said, it's really sweet because it shows the respect your dad had for your mother. Now, do I have a problem pumping my own gas? No. In fact, the other day we were at the gas station and we had 2 cars and we're waiting at 2 different pumps, and I was so used to pumping my own gas that he got out of the car to come pump the gas, and I was already pumping the gas, and he's like, I was going to pump your gas, and I'm like, oh, I did it. I did a no, because he was trying to be nice and
honor my wife.
Honor me, and I kind of took that away and didn't really mean to.
And that's a good, see, ladies, did you hear that? She took that away. Meaning, can she pump gas? Yes. Does it hurt her to pump gas? No. But as her husband, it's respect and it's honoring.
And I had to apologize to him and go, oh, I'm so sorry. I just was in the mode of, I'm gonna do it.
So for me as her husband, it's a way for me to show honor to my wife.
Yes.
Not a weaker vessel, do you hear me? But to honor her as my wife.
Chivalry, and Cece says, chivalry is great. My hubby is like that. Shouldn't go away. Amen. It shouldn't. We as women were biblically built to be honored. Men value respect. Women value honor. And like I said, I did a no-no just by pumping the gas, and I didn't mean to.
Well, I wouldn't call it a no-no, especially in today's society. But back in the 1940s, women expected it. And if you didn't honor them that way, they felt like you just put them down. And their whole value system was totally different on a whole nother level. And if you have any grandparents around today, ask them. Ask your grandmother about that. She'll probably surprise you with what she has to share with you about this on this subject. And it'd be a good learning experience, for sure. Ask your grandma, talk to you, or if you know an elderly lady or gentleman, talk to them. See how they think on this subject. It's totally different, everybody, or y'all. All right, let's get to reason why. Why have we ended up here? What's caused this breakdown in society? I believe back in the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, we had parental, or should I say grandparental influences in our home. What do I mean by grandparental influences? It's a word I just made up. And if it exists, I don't know that it does. So, grandparental influences in our home. there may be some of you that have a clue, that you may know where I'm going with this. Others are going, dude, you are making zero sense, and I don't get it. All right, let me tell you what I'm talking about. Grandparental. Back in 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, we had grandparents. It was a common place for your grandparents to live with you in your home. And again, talk to your grandparents, or if you know some elderly people, talk to them and they will tell you, explain this.
I'm sorry.
Okay, my wife's taking an intermission. And so as the children grew up, they didn't have just their parents giving them direction and guidance. They had the confirmation, they had the agreement of the grandparents coming right along and instilling the same values that they grew up with into their grandchildren. And then it was confirmed by their parents. And the respect and honoring your mother, honoring your sister, honoring the elderly lady on the street. If she's walking across the street back in the older movies, you'd see a young man ask her if he could take her bags for her and carry them across the sidewalk for her to the other corner. It was just the way society was. And in the older movies, it shows these things from time to time. But my point is here that up into like the 60s, 70s, it basically no longer existed. And grandparents no longer lived in the home. And we didn't have that grandparental influence upon our children, their grandchildren. And in the 70s, what happened? I grew up in the 70s. Sex, drugs, and rock and roll. In the 60s, I guess in the 50s, 60s, that started to wane. Because in the 60s, they had the sex, drugs, rock and roll. But by the 70s, grandparents were few and far between living in our homes. And then we ended up with single parents. The divorce rate was on the increase. We had single mothers raising children, trying their best, struggling every day. And what are the children doing? The children are ripped apart because the family unit's ripped apart. You have teenage girls getting pregnant, having babies, having abortions. And today it's a free-for-all. You know, how many children today grew up with a teenage mom? And it's becoming the norm. I believe this is a big part of the reason for why we've ended up in this self-centered society that we're becoming at the moment. This really needs to turn around. We really need to get back to basics. You can't touch fingers.
Sorry.
So I really believe this is a big root to that problem. Besides women's lib, you know, women not being treated properly in the beginning, in the first place. And that plays a big part in this picture as well. Well, don't look at me, I'm your equal. Don't look down upon me, I can do it too. They had something to prove, and they were out to prove it because they were sick and tired of being put down, and which was going on in the 60s, 50s. So I understand that finally they got fed up. But it's all of that has brought us to where we are now. A breakdown in society, utter chaos. You know, and when this is off subject a bit, but when this last election took place, all the mayhem and craziness in the street like we were a third world country. Wait a minute, that's not happening in America. Yes, it is. That shouldn't have ever happened.
Okay, CC World, we understand. Life keeps you busy. And yeah, I'm glad to hear that you got to have that influence in your life. It makes a difference. Great. Makes a difference. And I'm sorry to hear about your grandma. But having her in your life and those experiences or something
makes
I'm
a
sure
difference.
You would not trade it for anything. And yes, we do need to honor our husbands, and our husbands need to honor our wives.
Their wives, yes. And we don't see much of that in society today. You know, we learn by example. We need to be that example.
Thanks, Nathan. I'm glad to see you're still here. I'm glad you're listening.
So Cece having to go.
Yeah, she had to go.
Well, Cece, I don't know if you're still here, but if you are, thanks for being here, and I appreciate your input. It means a lot. As well as David Ernest. If you're still here, I want to thank you for your input. But those are my thoughts on this subject. You know, we really need to get back to basics.
And women, we don't need to strive so much to be considered equal. We need to strive to be considered capable. There is a difference. We are capable women. But we don't necessarily have to strive to be equal because we're different. And if we can get that through our thick skulls, then we will be doing much better as a society.
And you'll be serving your fellow female much better.
And allowing a man to be a man by opening a door or help us lift something that's awkward or heavy has nothing to do with my capability.
And it gives me as a man pride
in being able to help.
In doing that. And I'm a man. That's part of my purpose as a man. And that feels good. And it's good to exercise that.
Let's create together. Glad you're here. I don't know if you know what we're talking about, but we're generally talking about how society has become very self-centered, very uncaring for the disabled and the elderly, how we as women have allowed ourselves and our value to be lessened by not allowing men to be men.
Because you're not less than.
No, we're just as capable.
That was it.
Let's create together.
Let's create together. I haven't seen you for a while. I believe you're fairly new. And if not, you'll have to forgive me because I'm not. We got to interact. You know, if I don't see somebody for a while, there's so much going on. It's hard to keep track of everybody.
Oh, we've been so busy. It's
not just that on YouTube and everything.
I know.
Got to keep your eyes on looking at the camera. All right, so that's what I believe caused it. Solution is, ladies, you're capable. You don't have anything to prove. You are capable. And God made you that way. And men, we're able, you know, and to honor a woman, to respect a woman, it's common courtesy. It gets back to treating one another the way we want to be treated.
And thank you, David. I agree.
What's David say?
He says, I just want to absorb and I don't want to forget what I was taught as a young man. I'm 57.
Well, David, I'm not too much younger than you. I look young, but I'm not too much younger than you, David. And I agree. We got to teach this to this younger generation.
They need the example. They need to see women not being upset by a man opening a door. They need to be taught that it's okay to do it. And women need to step out from themselves and go, this is a gentleman, and start defining men by their behaviors as gentlemen. Not that it's a personal attack against a woman's capabilities. You know what?
No,
it's not.
nor is it somebody necessarily flirting with you. Although in today's society, I can see where a woman can be taking a double take going, wait a minute, what's the motive? Why is he doing this? What's he after? What's he trying to get?
But if he has a motive like that, it's going to become clear. If he's just opening the door to the grocery store or the car door or whatever.
No.
Well, I guess car door wouldn't be a stranger.
Referring to a stranger.
But if he's just opening the door to the grocery store or the gas station, if he's wanting to flirt, that motive will become clear.
It'll surface. But point being is, men, we got to teach the younger men how to do this. Young men, after watching this video, I'd really like to hear your input. What you thought, what you think, if you have any change of thought, if you've learned something. And open doors for your girlfriend. Go walk around the car and tell her you're going to start honoring her. And she may feel a little uncomfortable because it's not something she's used to. But watch how it makes you feel as a man and how she responds or starts responding after a while as a woman. She's going to like it. She's 18, 20.
And women?
Don't matter.
Teach our girls to expect this behavior. Silly thought that just came to my mind. I was 16, 17, going out on my very first date. And maybe I was a little younger. It was a group date kind of thing, a bunch of friends. And they honked rather than knocked on our door. And my mother would not allow me to go.
Because the guys honked and didn't come to the door showing respect.
And she taught me from that moment on to expect the respect I was due. And we need to teach our girls that.
And in doing so, you'll be teaching the men. Because you have to tell the young man later, why you didn't go out with them that night. It's worth it. It's worth it.
Actually, I was never allowed to go out with him. Ever. It blew his chance, honestly. Because my mother figured he had no respect for me. Or her, by the way, to walk up to the door, be a gentleman, introduce himself to my mother, and pick me up as a young lady.
Now we're talking about higher standards here than the society is
promoting.
Well, not only promoting that, I know everything my wife just said to this, a lot of people that may be listening to this after the live stream, and maybe even some here presently, going, whoa, I can't even wrap my head around that. That's extreme. Well, it's because our standards in society have got so weak, so flimsy. It's a free-for-all. Anything goes. And that's the problem. So, anything should not go. There should be rules. There should be standards. There should be values instead of the lack thereof.
So we need to teach our children, male or female. There's somebody older than you having to stand while you're sitting. You give them your seat. I remember as a kid, we weren't allowed to sit on the furniture if there was adults. If there was adults in the room and there wasn't enough seating, We were told, quite frankly, your butts are younger. You can sit on the floor. Most kids today would be going, huh? I got to give up my seat to sit on the floor so an older person can sit on the couch? It was a foregone conclusion.
That was common.
My aunts and uncles and everybody else was over at our house. As kids, we sat on the floor. We need to, and thank you, Nathan. We need to teach our kids the standards to expect on how they should be treated, males and females.
Papa Texas, you have some input. I'm sure you've got some things you could share on this subject. I appreciate you being here, Papa Texas. It's a real honor to have you in our live stream. Appreciate you stopping by on this subject. Can you say something in the chat room about the kind of a respect a young man showed a young lady when you were growing up? Like if your first date or any date, what were the things that you would do to show a girl that you respected her and honored her that this generation would know nothing about? Some basic things that you did. Would you mind sharing that?
Because if we don't give our children the building blocks they need, then the atrocious behavior that is happening in society will only continue and get worse. And then we have no right to go, why are we being treated this way? And I don't want to be 70, 80 years old trying to stay upright while waiting for a plane.
While her legs are aching, her knees are hurting, her hips are sore, and nobody has a clue.
Is sitting in a chair.
Papa Texas, if you're still here, would you mind commenting, sharing?
And if we don't give our kids the basic building blocks of how to respect one another and how to treat one another and what's expected of them, then we can't complain of the direction society's going in.
That we can make a difference. And it starts with me and you.
Totally unrelated story, but my oldest son, he was 18 years old and he was going into the Army.
Hold on, pause. Papa Texas says he just came in here to, it's late. He says, but treat her like a lady.
Yeah.
Well said. But Papa Texas, would you please expound on what that means? This generation, I think most of them are clueless. I don't think they understand the definition of treating a woman like a lady. Would you mind sharing that? If you have the time, I know it's probably really late where you're at. So if I'm not asking too much, would you mind sharing your take on this? What is it to treat a woman like a lady or a girl like a lady?
My son at that time had decided he was going in the Army. He had not signed the papers. He had not been sworn in. And at the very last minute, he found out he had a full ride scholarship to a school for mechanics, which he loves. And I told him, well, take it, do it. You know what he told me? You didn't raise me that way, Mom. I gave my word. I told them I was going in the Army, and that's what I'm doing because I gave my word. You know what? That put Mama in her place because he was right. I did. You give somebody your word, you keep it. put me in my place. I'm going, darn. Because, I didn't necessarily want to see him going into the military. Not that I thought it was terrible, but I didn't want to see that happen.
Okay, Papa Texas, that's funny, but not funny. Seriously though, Papa Texas, would you mind on giving? I agree with you. Don't grab things you shouldn't be grabbing on her. But point being though, in this generation, coming from a person of your age, you're older than I am, and when you say treat a female like a lady, treat a woman like a lady, if you were speaking to your grandson, what would you tell him?
What would that picture look like?
What would that look like? This generation needs to hear it from somebody older than me. And that's you, and you're here.
Yes.
Seriously though, Papa Texas, I'm looking to you if you have the time to put in an outline of what that looks like. What is it to treat a woman like a lady? Sounds like an old 70s song. But seriously, I'm waiting for your response.
Yeah, it did. It put me in my place really quickly. He's right. I did raise him
To keep his word.
To keep his word.
And back not that long ago, it was common knowledge a man was only as good as his word.
There weren't contracts. There weren't this or that.
There were business deals made on a handshake because that handshake was it. You just made a commitment when you shook hands. And many business deals were made on a handshake, and that was understood.
And that was just one way that I raised my kids, to teach them respect for themselves and for others. That was just one way. None of my kids would walk by and watch an elderly person stand. None of my kids would, even to this day, my kids, my brother, whatever, my brother was driving home from work and he works 12, 14-hour days and then he drives 2 hours plus home. And he was talking to me on the phone and he goes, "Hey sis, I gotta go. There's a gentleman broke down on the side of the road. I'm going to see if he needs any help."
So he ends his phone call, shortens his phone call with his sister to go give this older gentleman a helping hand to get his car going. That's getting back to basics. Unfortunately, that's called old school nowadays. It shouldn't be old school. It should be the norm, and that's the problem. That's the problem. It's not. But we can bring that back. We just got to be that example, and we got to teach it.
Okay, Papa Texas, we understand.
All right, Papa Texas. Appreciate your time. It's an honor to have you here. You being here means a lot. And don't be a stranger. I'm going to have to drop in on your channel. And thanks again.
Nathan, being younger than most of the people here, what ways did your mom teach you to be respectful?
If you're comfortable with sharing that.
I also taught my kids to be respectful of themselves. And by that I mean to always ask God first, to make sure it's set well with their consciences, to make sure it's set well with what I had taught taught them, what their dad had taught them, to make sure that it would meet that approval mark. And if it didn't, don't do it.
And that was the standard that she set, so that they had that as a rule. They could measure what they would do or wanted to do or were doing against that. But Nathan, if you're not comfortable with sharing anything like that, that's okay.
Well, ladies and gentlemen,
Look up there.
I think I'm gonna have to go again. I'm so
All right,
sorry.
And it's been about an hour or so. All right, so anybody have any questions, any comments? Does anybody have any questions or comments? I had to plug in this battery pack. Well, Papa Taxes, I see you're still here. Would you like to give an outline on what it is to treat a woman like a lady? I know, no pressure. And does anybody have any questions, comments? I'm thinking this should be thought-provoking. Musky Hands, hi, thanks for dropping in. Our conversation and subject for the night was respect, self-centeredness, our society having no regard for the elderly, and what it is to treat a woman like a lady, and men being men, females being ladies, and getting back to basics on taking the steps to bring that about. But you'll have to go back and replay the video. Okay, Papa Texas, we'll take a rain check. And Musky Hands, thanks for dropping in. I haven't seen you for a while. How have you been? David Ennis says, I vow to start setting a better example and to start teaching the youth in a kind of manner to have respect for everyone. David Ernest or Ennis, that's Ennis. Thank you, David. Thank you. You leave me speechless. And I hope that others see you make this stand. You'll be the spark to get the fire going. You know? We can all be that spark. There's a movie that's not real popular. It's called Courageous. And in that movie, Courageous, they have a vow of what it is to be a man and a father and to be a leader. Really good movie. If you haven't seen it, I recommend everybody to check out the movie Redbox. Not Redbox. Google it, and you'll be able to find it and buy it, I'm sure. The movie Courageous is well put together. Okay, Musky Hands, I hear ya. Work, you gotta live, you gotta pay bills, you gotta make $1 to buy a hamburger and to pay your cell phone. Okay, understood. Priscilla Brown, I'm glad you're here. I was just trying to find your channel the other day, and I'm glad you dropped in. Priscilla, what would you say to the men about what it is to treat a woman like a lady? No pressure. I'm not trying to put you on the spot. But you can handle it, I'm sure. Okay, Priscilla. Yeah, I've had to resubscribe to a bunch of people myself. All right, because my question was, Priscilla, what's it take for men to treat a woman like a lady? What would you say to men? Speak to us men, Priscilla. Tell us what or how a man, what he should do in order to treat a woman like a lady. It's your hour to shine. Seriously. Okay, Priscilla Brown says, to listen and communication is a key. Letting your walls down and trust them. Be a gentleman and just do the stuff like men did back in the older days. Did you hear that? Let me reread that. Be a gentleman and just do stuff like men did back in the older days. Priscilla, my wife and I was just mentioning that. You confirming it. Also, women are very different these days also. Well, Priscilla, that's because women need to get back in the understanding of, if a man opens a door for you, they're showing you honor. The women nowadays look upon this as you're thinking I'm weak or I'm lesser than. Women need to understand today, would you not agree, that they have this misunderstanding. If a man opens a door for a woman, it's to show her that he's honoring her as a female, as a lady, and he's giving her that respect. But women need to begin to understand this and change their perception of how they're looking at things. If I take you out on a date as a man and I go and I open your car door for you, I'm not looking down upon you. I'm not treating you less than. I am honoring you. And that's huge. And when that's understood, then a woman can have that admiration for what the man's doing for her by honoring her that way. And this is what needs to be understood. Would you not agree? And Priscilla Brown says, I agree, yes. So we need to start teaching this generation these principles, the way to understand it this way, because the way this is looked upon, it's been perverted, it's been twisted, and everything's upside down. And in our society today, it's a free-for-all, and people are trying to figure it out, but it's all muddled, it's all cloudy, and they don't know who to trust or what to believe. So we need to start teaching our children, our nephews, our nieces, these things, so that they can begin to have a balance and a foundation of values to get back to the basics that we're walking away from, that barely exists today, unfortunately, especially in this new generation. Oh yeah, it's okay. Nathan likes drums, says, I agree. I'm glad you do. I figured you would, Nathan. I figured you would. Okay, Priscilla Brown also says, yeah, I'm sure in these days, men just come over to pick up the date and blow the horn. Yeah, that's all backwards. You know, us men, fathers,
Mothers too.
stepfathers, big brothers, we need to start teaching this to the men around us, the young men around us. We need to start teaching them. You go to the door, you talk to the parent, you tell them, hi, I'm so and so. I'm going to be out with your daughter, blah, blah, blah. I'll have her home by such and such time if that's okay with you.
And you know, in today's society, if a girl's picking up the boy, you know what? The same thing should fall to the girl.
Well, boy's in control when he comes home.
But I mean, if my daughter had went on a date which in general didn't, I mean, it didn't happen, but if she had went to pick up a guy because she had the car or whatever, I would have expected her to go to the door, introduce herself, and say, I'm here to pick up so and so. We have a date. When would you like him home?
Or the young man, already knows what times he needs to be home, and he just needs to honor his parents and make sure he's home on the time frame that he knows his parents want him home. And the girl shouldn't have to ask or mention that.
But you get the general idea.
Yeah, because Priscilla Brown here says, right before you started sharing that, she says, yes, manners need to be taught to both. Manners, good word, Priscilla. Manners, wow, that's a word we don't hear much today talked about. And it all, I guess the heading could be manners. Manners.
Yeah.
And, this society, this generation needs to be taught the definition of manners, the details of manners, because I guess this whole entire content of what we've been discussing tonight could be called manners. It really could. Good word, Priscilla. Papa, Texas. Touching the big thing with manners. Yes, definitely so, Papa, Texas. And I'm glad you're here. Really appreciate you being here. That means a lot. David Ennis, if I don't want to mess up your name, David. I think it's Ennis. That's Ennis. I agree also, but maybe I'm old-fashioned.
No,
yes,
you're not.
I am too. It shouldn't be old-fashioned, David. It shouldn't be old school. It should be the norm.
Ultimately, if we teach society, or reteach, I should say, society, these standards, we're leaving a legacy for society in the basic knowledge of respect.
Yes. And like I was saying earlier, for those that have been in here since, I was saying that back like in the 1920s, 30s, 40s, 50s, we had grandparents living in our homes as children. We grew up with grandparents in our homes. So not only did we have the teachings coming from our parents, we had our grandparents' influence also being taught to us, and their influence upon us. And since the 60s, 70s, I mean, Nowadays we store grandparents, parents into convalescent homes, and that's a bad thing. That's a whole nother subject matter for another day. But that's huge. We shouldn't be doing that. But because we started doing this in the 60s, we don't have the influence of the grandparents upon the children, which the grandparents would teach the children, yet the parents teaching the children. And it really built this foundation within that child of respect, right and wrong. And it really just confirmed it and fortified. And so after the 60s, our nation, our country started to just wane, weave, and now we're just reckless, man. We're just crashing into anything and everything. We're out of control. And we got to get back to these basics. But the grandparents not being in the homes is a part of that as well. That's missing. And our grandparents shouldn't be in convalescent homes. I took care of my dad. I took him on my honeymoon because I had no one to care for him, and I wasn't going to put him in a convalescent home.
Taking care of my mom.
And that's a whole nother subject. My wife is taking care of her mom. She's here in our home. But we need to have this. We need to have another live stream talking about this, and then we could get into the abuse that comes along in convalescent homes and the lack of care and disrespect and everything else that takes place. It'd be a huge subject matter as well.
And it's okay to be quote unquote old fashioned, by the way.
Old fashioned should be the norm.
It should be the norm.
And as much as some people don't like it today, our country, like it or not, was built, and the foundation of our country was on God and the Bible. And we had God-fearing men that founded this country. And we slowly started waning and getting away from that. And that's the other half of the reasons why things are out of control. That's what's unspoken. That's the elephant in the room, is our country was built and founded on God and the Bible, and we're turning our backs on God and the Bible, and our country's falling apart as an end result.
Thank
And
you,
so, if you want to hear it, like it, don't like it, I'm not preaching to you. I'm not trying to preach, but we got to bring up all aspects and cover every base in order to get back to the basics. And our country was very much surrounded by God, the Bible. Look at our money. Our money, in God we trust. How much longer will that be on our money? I don't know. But it's all over our country. The Constitution comes from the Bible. The Constitution comes from the Bible. Our history, you look at it, the 10 Commandments used to be in our courthouses. Every courthouse had the 10 Commandments on a wall somewhere in that courthouse. If it wasn't first thing you seen when you walked through the doors. Why was the 10 Commandments in the courthouses of America? For those of you that don't know, why? And I bet most of this younger generation doesn't have a clue to why, so I'm going to share this with you. The laws of our land came from the Bible. I believe the book of Numbers, that you can find the 10 Commandments. And the laws of our land came from the 10 Commandments. And that's why the 10 Commandments was in our courthouses. And for them to remove the 10 Commandments from our courthouses, ultimately, they should say, well, the laws of our land are built on those 10 Commandments. Therefore, we need to throw out the laws that that 10 Commandments established in our country.
No, but that would be worse for anarchy.
But the point is they're not going to do that. But the very foundation that the laws of our land was built on, they want to throw away and eliminate. And
Wonder why everything's collapsing.
but it's where it started. It's where the laws started that govern: do not lie, do not steal, right? Back about 40 years ago, if you were committing adultery, you could be thrown in jail. The Bible says do not, the 10 Commandments says don't commit adultery. And so that's unheard of nowadays. We would laugh and shake our heads and go, what? But what if it was still a law? What if they still honored that law today? Would we have all the adultery going on that's going on like crazy? Nobody even thinks about anymore. It's almost like norm, right? It shouldn't be. But again, I'm not here to preach. I'm just saying that we got to get back to basics. And that's what I'm ultimately saying. You know, because I got a lot I could say. I could preach a sermon on all of this.
Thank you, Nathan.
But that's not what I'm here to do right now. And so, for what it's, I'm a Christian for what that's worth, and I don't hide that. Most of everybody on my channel knows that. There may be a few of you that I haven't communicated much with, and you're not aware of that, but I don't hide it. But ultimately,
Thank you, Nathan. Yes, back to basics, back to teaching what's right, living by God's standards, being willing to listen to God's standards, and like I said earlier, holding up that personal yardstick. Would God approve? Would your mom approve? Would your dad approve? Would your grandparents approve? Do I personally approve of this behavior or this action? If the answer is no to any of the above, don't do it. Therefore, you see an older person standing and you're sitting, your parent, if you know that that is wrong, give them your seat.
thank you, David Ernest, for mentioning that. I'm glad to know you're a fellow believer. That's good to know. And Papa Texas, I don't know if you're still here, but thank you again for being here. I appreciate it. And Priscilla, it's a pleasure to have
always
everyone on my channel here. I had no clue how this was going to turn out. Yeah. Well, I guess I need to get this wrapped up. So everyone that's here, let's see, I got to check and see how many people are in the chat. Okay, we have 6 watching. All right. And so before I end this, let me go back through here. We've got Musky Hands, David Ennis, it's Ennis, Papa Texas, Let's Create Together, CC's World Australia, did I miss anybody? Dad's Piranha. Sorry I didn't see you. I don't know if you're still here, but Dad's Piranha, thank you for dropping in. Oh, Dad's Piranha and Pipe Carvings Piranha. Dad's Piranha and Pipe Carvings Piranha. Thanks for dropping in, bro. Love wins. Love wins. If you're still here, thank you for dropping in. Okay, that's everybody. If I missed somebody, let me know.
Please.
Yeah, at least we have some groundwork taken. Yes, David Ernest, we do have some groundwork. Thank God. And this is where it starts. You know, you could have this topic on your channel. Everyone here could have this topic on their channel. That would be great. Something to think about, everybody. Bring this to your channel. You know, give your take on it. Your position on it. Getting back to basics. You know, united we stand. United we can make this happen. It starts with me and you.
God bless everybody.
Well, Papa Texas, I'm really glad that you're here, that you're still here. You've hung in there with us. I appreciate your time. I appreciate everybody's time. You know, you could be doing other things, sleeping, watching your favorite movie on someone else's channel. I mean, doing your own video. I mean, there's many things you could be doing right now, and you're here. And that means a lot. I appreciate that very much. And it's real heartfelt.
Yes. Thank you, guys. God bless.
All right, so I'm going to have to call it a night. Nathan, you've done a great job. You're doing an excellent job here as a moderator. And we'll have to talk one of these days soon. All right, thanks again, everybody.
God bless. Good night.
Papa Texas, you make a mean burger. And Priscilla, I'll be dropping by everybody's channel here. All right, God bless. Bye for now. And good night. As I'm trying to close this out.
Can you do that on my phone?
Oh, I
Do
can't.
that on yours. He has to do that on yours.
I am trying to close this out on my wife's phone. I got to close it out up there. Okay, everybody. Thanks again. And take care. Nathan likes drums. Have a good night. Have a good weekend. Papa's Texas says good night, all. It's all good. All right, Papa Texas. Nathan and everybody, thank you very much. Priscilla, thank you for your input and everybody's time. Thank you, everybody, for all your input. Bye for now, and God bless. And never give up, because there's always a way. Bye for now. God bless.